In 1990, Konami had a hole in their schedule. Akumajou Densetsu was their big 1989 release, and Akumajou Dracula wouldn't be ready until next year. What kind of monster game could they release in 1990? How about a platformer starring the cute version of Dracula? Now, this wasn't the first time that Konami did something like this. They had already made their cutified version of Gradius, and we'll be seeing the Famicom version of that in just a couple of weeks. The plot of the game is that the son of Dracula, so you're not actually playing as Dracula himself, fell asleep at age 9 and woke up 10,000 years later. When he wakes up, he finds out that a genie has teamed up with aliens to take over Dracula's castle. Don't worry about it, just go with it. You have to fight your way through 9 stages to defeat the evil genie, and as you do that, it will jump and be attacks, usually a fireball. You can also press up and throw these shots above you, and you will absolutely have to use that. You can also hold down B for roughly 1 second, and then when you release the button, you'll use your special ability. Most of these will be attacks, but there are a couple that do something different. If you defeat an enemy with one of these charged attacks, then they'll drop a coin, which are used at the end of stages to get a chance at extra lives. At the end of the first 5 stages, you pick up an additional ability when you clear the level, and you cycle through these abilities by pressing the select button. You start out with a slightly larger fireball, and it's fine, but you'll never use it after the first stage because you immediately get better options. Your second ability is a spread of 5 fireballs. These home in on enemies, and while they only do about as much damage as your normal shot, between spitting out 5 of them and the tracking, this will wind up being your default attack for most of the game. Of course, if you run into an enemy that's a little bit tougher, you might want to take it out in one shot, and that's where the third ability, Explosion, comes in. The blast sticks around and does repeated damage, which makes it the perfect option for bosses. The fourth power-up is the Bat Transformation. Now, you might think that this trivializes platforming, and it kind of does if you use it at the right spots, but it is kind of limited. If you're damaged or collide with any terrain, then you instantly change back, and you're also on a timer. It counts down from 5, but it's really about 15 seconds. You also really can't attack while in bat form. If you hit attack, you'll change back, but at least you will shoot a fireball. The next power-up is the most useless of them all, Ice Shot. It can freeze an enemy in place, and then you can jump on top of them. I used it once here to demonstrate how it works, because you're not really required to ever do this. There is one boss on the 9th stage where you're required to use ice shots to defeat it, and that's really the only time you'll ever break it out. The final power-up is Reverse Gravity, and it lets you walk on the ceiling. There's a few spots where you're forced to use it for some platforming where the bat couldn't safely fit through, and there's one boss that requires that you use it to attack. But you're not going to be breaking this one out too often. Speaking of those bosses, I gotta talk about the first stage boss, because that sure is a look. Okay, it's a manji representing spiritualism, and it's supposed to be a ghost, but that has some really severe connotations over here. Generally speaking, the bosses here aren't too tough. There's usually a pretty simple trick to them, and with the explosion spell, you can usually outrace them in damage. Another boss that's infamous among Famicom collectors outside of Japan is the Statue of Liberty, who gives you a quiz game. It's the only thing in Boku Dracula-Kun that requires knowledge of Japanese, though it isn't that difficult to get through with a guide. A lot of the early game isn't too difficult here. Yeah, you'll die to the loose platforming in the ice stage, or you might have trouble the first time that you ride the roller coaster, but until stage 6 it's not too bad. Then the game gets nasty, and from stage 6 on, you really have to know what's coming up in order to avoid the obstacles. Like while you're running away from this ball, do you jump across the hole or go down it? Turns out you go down, but how are you going to know that the first time you get here? And then there's stage 7. It's the shortest level in the game, but it is one of the most infamous stages on the Famicom. All you have to do is jump back and forth on these platforms as you go up a tube. But because of your motion, your jump height's a lot higher than it normally is. The platforms are solid, so you can't pass through them, and none of the abilities that would let you go up faster work. It's a very long section where the individual moments aren't too hard, but you basically have to be perfect for about 40 seconds. The boss at the top is one of the tougher ones, unless you figure out that you have to shoot an explosion in his face. Stage 8 also features some instant death traps that you have to know the audio cue for, so you'll get killed by those the first time you encounter them. And then there's the 9th and final stage. 3 consecutive bosses and some difficult platforming in between them, and if you die, you go back to the beginning. There's no checkpoints for that one. At least you have infinite continues. And there's even passwords to let you pick up the game later, though they stop giving out passwords after level 7. The bonus games at the end of each level are a weird mix. First you play a ladder game to determine which of the 4 minigames you'll play. There's a lottery machine where you spin the crank by rotating clockwise on the D-pad. These dancers where you have to guess the color of their underwear. Yes, really. A version of the electromechanical arcade machine Piccadilly Circus that Konami had at the time, where it's a roulette that determines a prize, and you put in additional credits to increase the value of the prize it lands on. And finally, a version of the toy where you stick swords into a pirate in the barrel. Here it's a skeleton that you're sticking swords into, and the number of swords that are in the barrel before the head pops off determines how many extra lives you get. Now I've always had some difficulty playing Boku Dracula-Kun. To me it feels like the jumping is on a slight delay, and you lock in place when you perform an attack, and that can be very dangerous on later stages. Konami ported Boku Dracula-Kun to the Game Boy, and if you were familiar with the game before its recent re-release in the Castlevania collection, it was probably because that version got released internationally. As you might guess, this is a fairly popular game in Japan. It seems to get at least as much attention as the serious games that spawned it. But as I mentioned, I'm not as fond of this one. Don't get me wrong, it's a well-made Konami game, but I feel like it lacks a lot of their usual polish. That's actually how I feel about a lot of the late 1990, early 1991 Konami games on the Famicom. Fortunately, this slump doesn't last long.